Okay, we're live. Today we have Chloe with us. We'll also have Jonathan joining us in a few minutes, as well as Connor from the Daily Discussion, which is also about to be the Union of Opposites or University of Opposites, I believe. So we've been talking recently about some issues that are political / psychological, and it's somewhat a pre-stream for Tuesday's stream, especially because lately what I've started doing is having a stream that's usually Tuesday at noon, which is mainly for those in Europe, and that way they can join. But then some other people want to get in, so this is kind of like a pre-stream for that stream. And Chloe has been with us since almost the beginning of the group. She hasn't posted a lot, but that's fine. And I've been talking to her recently about some of the issues going on, and it's good to get some diversity here in the stream. We too often have just us white males, and that's not by design. I just invite whoever wants to come, and it ends up being that way. So today I want to talk a little bit about the psychological nature of our political climate, especially recently. I was talking a little bit before we started recording how, years ago, not even that many, like 10 years ago, if you're going to vote or do anything related to politics, you just kind of knew what the issues were and you focus on those. But now it's like people hardly know what the issues are. And if you try to pin them down on what their issues are, they slip away and they have no idea what they want out of things. But Chloe has finished. She's finishing her second master's degree. The first one was an MBA. This one is going to be in psychology.
Yeah, clinical psychology. Yeah.
Political psychology.
No,
okay.
clinical.
Oh, clinical. Okay.
Clinical personal. Yeah.
So Chloe, why don't you just say a couple things for a minute? Let us know anything.
No, there's like whatever that's on the internet is going to be forever. So.
All right. Well, no pressure or anything.
No pressure. It's just forever. No pressure.
Yeah. That's all. Just the eternal, the eternal internet, locking in, whatever you say. So
it's gonna be forever.
But if it's that bad, I can always edit it out before it gets into the eternity.
After the YouTube world one.
Yeah. But I don't know, Chloe, if you want to just say anything about yourself and anything you're interested in particular to the red pill versus woke world, and then we'll get into that. And like I said, Jonathan and Connor will be joining us in the next couple minutes.
Yeah, well, yeah, because when I got my first master, I was in Arkansas. I came from China. I'm Chinese. So I went to Arkansas. That was for 2 years. And then I came to LA, and that was like a cultural shock for me.
Yeah.
To be in LA. And then I worked for a couple years. Then I got my second master. So it's basically, I just want to learn more because just feel stupid in LA. There's really a cultural shock for me. Like
so in that particular, how do you compare the three different cultures? You went from China to Arkansas, which is kind of conservative and anti-Clintons, and then now you're in the Los Angeles area finishing your second master's degree. So how would you compare the three cultures?
I mean, in Arkansas, it's very conservative. People are very square. There are Christians, the Mormons, Republicans. It's like you used to just sort of know that these are the people that you deal with. In LA, holy shit! And I it's just too diverse in LA. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean. The diversity is a good thing, except the issue, I think, with LA, I've lived in LA and live pretty close to it now.
Yeah.
It's the issue that that diversity is always good once, like, you know what it is. Like, okay, here's some Democrats, here's this culture, that culture, here's some Republicans, here's religious people, non-religious people, whatever. But then when they get into, but when it's like nobody knows what's what, when we are, I don't know what you'd call it. Okay, we operate in a certain way that we want to know right away where people are in the culture and in the
Exactly.
and in the hierarchies. So
exactly.
So like for I don't know how many thousands of years, at least thousands of years, it was really important in whatever hierarchy that you were in, whether it was military or tribal or a corporate hierarchy, how you dressed, whether that's a feather hat or a suit that was sort of mimicking the military garb. It was to say this is like what tribe that a person's in and their rank. That's why they'd even have like the stripes on their arm and all that to say what they are exactly. And now it's not like we necessarily need that exactly, but it makes it really confusing. It's like you meet all these people and it's like, okay, what are you? Cool. What's your rank? But it doesn't necessarily have to be that exactly, but it's just because everybody's so nebulous and they don't even know what they are themselves, and they don't know if they want to know.
Yeah, exactly.
It just makes it really hard to navigate, and it makes people a little crazy around here.
Yeah, exactly. And there are so many backlashes. If you're like come out as something in the wrong group, they're gonna it's like there's so much consequences. There's so many consequences. Yeah. So people are really these days.
Did you say that you had an experience like that at
I can't even talk about it. It's like it's so bad I can't even talk about it.
I mean, can you talk about it at all in ambiguous terms as far as generally people were like
So basically, if you came out as something else in the wrong group of people, they will find ways to make your life miserable. It's just they will do that to you. It's like I don't know why, but they would just do that to you. Probably because you clash their reality in a way.
Right.
So they will find ways to say, you know what, you're no better than us or whatever. So they're gonna try to find ways to f fucking the ass. Yeah. So.
Do you think? Because I'm trying to get a little bit different.
It's like a cancel culture. Yeah, it's like those cancel culture.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a different minority perspective. But do you think? Do you think it might be different as groups of females? Do you think groups of females might be a little bit worse at trying to destroy each other or whatever?
I think there's Jordan Peterson says females are just as aggressive as males, right? Like there's a 40-60 ratio or something. Yeah, it depends on the female, but I don't think male are more aggressive than female in general. Not in my experience, but girls are aggressive in other ways. It's just not physical.
Right. Well, I think that's a lot of the cultural frustration right now, if you could call it that. It's because in the way that culture was set up for at least about 10,000 years or thousands of years for sure, men would have to assert their aggression, showing overt physical dominance or some kind of physical prowess. And now it's different because I think it was Yuval Noah Harari who likes to point out how nerds rule the world, where basically nerds are on the top of the social hierarchy. So basically so whether you're a successful computer programmer, like Bill Gates might be toward the top of most hierarchies.
He is at the top. Yeah, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, and then even some of the academics, which might include Jordan Peterson, Yuval Noah Harari, and some of the others, they're on the top. And then so now you have men who are trying to figure out how to navigate the hierarchies because they can't use their physical dominance like they used to. And then women, I think, are more naturally inclined to the current world in a lot of ways, because how that you're going to navigate the social hierarchies isn't going to be physical, it's going to be psychological. And so it's like, before, if a man would come out and make himself known that he might be the enemy, then he would, either there would be a duel of some sort, or there would be a fight, or he'd get his ass kicked somehow. But now it's a little different, where guys have to almost behave in a feminine way, because it's got to be a social I don't know if I'd say manipulation or destruction or power, or at least psychological, which is what women more naturally do. And so, I think it's going to be weird, or I don't know if I'd say weird, but it's going to be interesting to see over the next few decades, because I think women might be more inclined towards the top end of the dominance hierarchies. Although, again, there's a point that Jordan Peterson makes sometimes, that to be towards the very top,
right,
it takes a certain level of sacrifice that,
for sure.
So yeah, that sometimes women are more sane enough to not do. Some men are a little bit too crazy to be willing to work 70, 80, 100 plus hours a week sometimes, and do other kinds of backstabbing to climb the hierarchy and make other kinds of sacrifices. But I don't know, what has your experience been like, as far as if you, and you don't need to get into details, but as far as if you come out as a potentially the other thing, whether that's conservative and you're around liberals or whatever the case, then they have tried to sabotage you or something along those lines, or just psychological things?
Yeah, I mean, it's like an in-group, out-group thing. Sometimes when you are the out-group and then you go into this in-group, sometimes they welcome you, sometimes they don't. So I think it's just nothing more than that. Sometimes you get lucky, you get a group of open-minded people. Sometimes, you don't. I guess I was, but I have my issues too. So I wouldn't say it's all of their fault. I take responsibility. Yeah.
Take
Video, I take
responsibility.
responsibility. I'm like, good acting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the other kind of thing that I was trying to get into today, and I think Connor and Jonathan will be here in a minute, but it's just this concept that it's almost transformed. The politics have become almost like religious games in a way.
Exactly. Yeah, that was like, I saw those people kneeling in front of other people. I mean, that was like that's like almost like ritualistic.
Right. And kissing their feet and chanting.
Yeah. Washing their feet and everything. I'm like, it's a religion. Yeah. So people are just inherently religious. Yeah.
Right. Definitely. And they are that. And the thing is, sometimes when you see those extreme examples like that, it makes it more evident. But the thing is, it always starts sort of unconsciously, and the way that it starts, and it's been going on for at least a few years, at least in the political sphere, is like I said, even about 10 years ago ish, maybe even almost 5 years ago, politics were about issues. They were like, you would really know, like, okay, if I vote for this person, or I support this cause or party or group or whatever, it's so I can try to get this thing passed, whether it's something in legislation. It's going to be like, okay, I'm for or against abortion. I'm for or against open borders, or for or against, military deployment, or I want to expand government or shrink government. And now it's like nobody really knows what the issues are. It's like some of the politicians, they don't even think at all. They'll just like get in front of a, you know, whatever, a microphone or whatever, and they'll just be like, should I say this? And then you know, it's like somebody will be like, oh no, social media said 1/3 of your followers didn't like that, so say something different, you know. So they're not even thinking, and there's definitely no leadership anymore. And so yeah, so I mentioned the red pill versus woke mainly because that's what really makes it like a religious thing, because both sides are about kind of like waking up from the matrix and you know, that kind of thing. And so the thing is, it's like if one side's saying you got to see it like this, it looks like this but it's really this, then the other side's saying no, it looks like this but it's really this, and then they're going to fight about the issues. In the end, it's like they're not coming together on anything, you know. It's
yeah,
like,
both sides does that. Yeah,
right.
Basically just attack each other if they're not following each other's narratives. It's all the same. It's the same.
Right. And and what makes it really tough is it's like both sides almost seem to want an ambiguous, hard to follow narrative. You know, it's like if you go to either side, and I'm sure the woke side is a little worse, but they're both pretty bad. But if you go to either side and you say, okay, what exactly do you want? Do you want this? Then they'll say, no, 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 no. And, okay, well, it seems like you might want this. No, 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 no. It's like they don't want to get to any narrative that's discernible, because I don't know if it's an unconscious thing, but they want the narrative to be completely indiscernible, which makes it almost like it's like a, you know, God or a devil or a really bad projection. So I don't know. Have you had any experiences or thoughts along those lines?
Well, basically, you know, I'm Chinese. I came to the States. I didn't know anything about Democrat, Republican, and all of that. So basically, I have to learn all this shit. And and then I realized what I learned is all processed information.
Right.
You know, it's like eating processed food. Those are not good for your health. So I think it's pretty chaotic to me. I feel like politics to me has always been pretty chaotic. But there's only one right way to do it, and maybe just moderately on the right. I think that would be.
Yeah. And I don't know. It just gets so confusing because, like, okay, especially like right now when, like, okay, the George Floyd situation was obviously, you know, screwed up, that had to happen, that there was a unfortunate death. But now there's been several deaths, including Black, that have been the fault of the riots and protests and looting. And so you would think that at some point they would say, okay, we're going to stop being violent because we have caused more problems than we've potentially solved. And it's not going that direction at all. I mean, it's somewhat going down with the violence and everything, just because people, I think, are getting it out of their system, you know. But other than that, it's like, it's just herd mind senselessness.
Are you just checking out if anybody gonna come on here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Connor's trying to get it on his phone. He's having an issue with his.
Get in here with the phone.
Well, no, with because I don't know. I might start using Zoom instead, just because sometimes people
meeting on the Zoom. Yeah, Zoom is nice too. Yeah, we can.
Well, it seems to have issue. StreamYard seems to have issues sometimes trying to use it on the mobile.
Let me take a look because the message keeps pushing. Telling me on Google Chrome. Yeah. So explain your shirt. Who's on your shirt? I can't even tell.
This is Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay.
and this is, and I got this shirt actually about a year ago, just when I was going through the.
Information.
Well, no, I was going through last year. I read like 100 books and just kind of going on some personal transformation things. And
Right.
one of the best audiobooks, which is mostly what I was doing, was Martin Luther King's autobiography, which was done a little differently because it was mainly read by LeVar Burton, but then it had parts that were mixed in parts that were recordings of Martin Luther King Jr. talking as well.
Right.
But anyway, I was kind of having the thought, like, at the same time, it's like, we're always kind of like trying to think, like, if there's an excuse right now that I should be violent, or an excuse right now that I should do the wrong thing, be dishonest or whatever. And so I saw this shirt. I got a bunch of shirts last year as I was kind of going through the journey, and I like that it's like it's the time is always right to do what is right, is what it says.
Like what? Tell me.
Right, because sometimes we can, which is a quote by him, but it's because sometimes we think like we can justify in our head, like, oh, it's okay to lie now, or it's okay to go looting or rioting or whatever.
Oh, that's what it means for sure. Yeah, about right decision, making the right decision. Right.
Right.
Totally.
Because we, whether we do it unconsciously or some, bias or whatever, it's so easy to just be like,
yeah, it is.
I'm going to do the wrong thing now or whatever.
Yeah, it is easy to be irresponsible, to act out of passion. Yeah, it is easy to do that.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Hey. We got Jonathan, one of the coolest guys in town, or Tennessee town anyway.
As cool as you can be there.
Yeah, as cool as a Tennessee man can be. Okay, so Jonathan, this was a little bit of a I don't know, we're kind of like diverging between topics a little bit. We were on religion for a while.
Yep.
And I want to get into politics a bit for a couple chats, because I feel like the God issue is a little bit slippery, although we may go back to that again after a couple weeks, because I think basically this week we'll be on politics a little bit, but we'll see how long. And then probably sometime in a week or two, we'll get on to education and things and just take it from there. But we were just talking a little bit about how the political landscape right now is just really like, okay, can I ask you your age, Jonathan?
Oh, okay. I'm not sure why. I'm 27.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I was just saying how, you may remember coming into the political landscape, a few years ago, even, where it seemed a lot more straightforward, maybe when you started voting when you're 18 or 19, and it was a lot more straightforward as far as like, okay, this is the issue that I am for or against, so this and that is the person or party or group or whatever that I'm going to vote for. But right now it's like, other than being anti the other group, or that's about it. It's hard to like lock down what any of the issues are of anybody, and it's just really hard to figure out like what anybody really wants out of politics anymore. And another reason I wanted to kind of like talk about that is because one of the biggest problems I think we have is like, okay, the real winner of every election almost isn't either of the people exactly. It's the people who didn't vote, because more people don't vote than the people who do, or at least more people don't vote for the winner by a large margin, or for either of, or for either of the top two parties. So it's like, if anybody wants to cause real political change, they've got to find ways to bring in those people who don't vote every single year, which is approximately most people, not by a large margin. But I think most of the reasons we have about half the country, or maybe a little more than half the country, that don't vote at all, is because it's so hard to see what the issues are and how they really affect people. Or if that they do, then they just say, screw those guys. It's like what is it? The South Park thing, douchebag and turd sandwich.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've lost count of how many times I've actually used that analogy in the last 4 years. So
yeah. And that was, I think, my real frustration is, as whatever happens with this election coming up in November, it's like already like massively disappointing, because it's like, okay, like everybody was all like, yeah, okay, we're gonna get Trump out by bringing in somebody else, and so they had 4 years to figure this out.
Joe Biden.
And the best they could do is a turd sandwich that's halfway dead already, or
a carbon copy of Donald Trump, basically.
Yeah.
Which again is the issue of like, what are the issues? We can't figure out what the issues are or anything. So I don't know. You're the new guy to get here in the last couple minutes, so I want to hear from you a little bit, Jonathan, on what you think on all that.
You might be surprised to know that I actually haven't voted yet.
Okay.
Because I've felt this way since something like the second Obama term.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the political system we have, where all the issues get pigeonholed into Democrat or Republican,
right,
is psychologically damaging.
Right.
It's a obfuscation of the entire conversation.
Right.
And it brings out the tribalism that we need to try to be suppressing, because you ask the question, okay, it was Trump versus Hillary, okay, great, but it wasn't Trump versus Hillary. It was this tribe of Democrats who couldn't care less what Hillary said, who was supporting this ideology, really just as a group, versus a carbon copy of them that just made different noises.
Right.
And the superficial noises are different, but the pattern of behavior is exactly the same. And so so it's not about having conversation. I mean, those debates were just the cringiest thing to watch. And so it looks like we're going to have a repeat, unless so I do think that people are starting to wake up slightly. I'm not sure, actually.
It's funny we use that term so much, and that's kind of where I was going with this. That both sides are like, wake up is like this. No, wake up like this.
Yeah.
And neither agree on what to wake up and that it's like. So, but they both insist to wake up it's like something else, and that's where the whole mess is. But you're right. I think people are like, okay, and I'll get right back to you. But like, I remember I watched this interview of the people who made the Rise of Jordan Peterson documentary, and there's like an interesting quote there where they're just talking about, they were kind of like liberals originally, or maybe like in the woke camp, and then they were talking about like, oh, now I see this side of it, like the red pill camp, and then they were asking the other like assistant producer or whatever, like, oh, so are you red pilled now? And he's like, maybe for a minute, but I'm beyond that now. And so I think that's kind of like maybe the ultimate awakening is when people get beyond, both pills, or, both woke or red pill. And that's maybe, I think, what we're starting to see is like another level of awakening, if you could say so. Yeah.
Meta awakening almost. Yeah, we've got to have election reform, and I don't know how it's going to happen because the whole point of getting election reform would be voting someone in who would be willing to do that, and and it seems to be evolutionarily advantageous to form these tribes because it creates a wall where unless you're part of one of these tribes, you're not going to have enough firepower. So people like Tulsi Gabbard, Andrew Yang, those moderates who wanted change, that wanted discussion, they didn't go anywhere, but everyone seemed to be so behind them. And magically, I still don't understand how this actually happened, but magically Joe Biden won the nomination. And, immediately you start seeing all these sources.
It's simply because he was the establishment pick.
Right.
It was the same thing with, and I guess on the blue Democrat side, it's a bit more that way, especially, and I don't know how many elections, but like even with Hillary, she was originally sort of like the establishment pick in 2008 when Obama first won, but at some point they realized, oh, okay, it looks like Obama is establishment enough to be our sort of like establishment guy, but looks anti-establishment enough to easily win. So they made a deal, which is basically step aside Hillary, he'll put you in the cabinet and you'll win right after him. And so then it was like with Hillary, 4 years ago, it was like no chance anybody else could, get the nomination. It had to be Hillary. And then this time I'm just surprised that it was like 3 years and they couldn't come up with anything better though. That's been my whole complaint.
Well, the Democrats did come up with plenty of better things this time around. They just completely ignored them. Because they didn't want Tulsi Gabbard going on Fox News and talking to the other side because that's treason, right?
Well, and I guess it's okay. The most Democrats and most people as individuals on that side were trying to find a better person, like whether it's Tulsi Gabbard, even Mayor Pete, they're better. Okay, well, almost any of them would have been better than Joe Biden. But the thing is, that was the establishment pick. So on the other hand, if it was, so it's like the establishment that needed to make a better pick, but they just didn't want to. And it's just funny that they had 3 years to come up with something better, and that's the best they could do. But
Joe Biden, yeah.
Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of talk about how, and I don't know if something will come public, but it just doesn't seem feasible that he could finish an 8-year term. Maybe he could finish a 4-year term, but he can barely public speak at all. And it's like, how are you supposed to be president when one of your main duties is to publicly speak? So
yeah,
it's a mess.
Well, I'm really curious to see how this election plays out, because on the one hand, you have the liberals who say, oh, well, we've always wanted a woman president, right?
Right.
And then on the other side, the conservatives say, well, we want someone who wants small government. And then the libertarian candidate, Joe Jorgensen, has actually both of those things. And so I'm curious how many liberals will actually shift over to her just because they want, because it's weird. Why? I always thought the Democrats were going to find someone who was a minority, who would stand up for, say, liberal, liberal talking points and stuff, like rights and whatnot. And they found the whitest, most sex offendered, most Donald Trump looking guy you could have found. It's like, do they not care about principles anymore? Like, what's going on here? It's the weirdest thing. So one way or another, we're gonna have to. So this will be the premise I would sort of throw out there in this conversation, because I don't really have a hat in politics. I never have. But I do think that the two-party system and the rigmarole we go through every 4 years is not good for the psychology of our culture. And so I think we need to get rid of the system. I don't know what that looks like. And I'm curious as to what it would look like. But election reform has to happen, and somehow or another we have to weaken the power of these two parties that try to dominate the media and dominate elections every 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of other countries have multiple parties, but I mean, they'll have more than it's weird because we have two strong parties, and then that's kind of it. Although we do have other parties, I think a lot of the whole setback was what happened in was '92 with Ross Perot with the first time Bill Clinton was elected, where I don't remember all the stats on it, but he was probably the strongest third party candidate in history, or definitely in the past 100 or so years, and everybody just looks at it as, oh, he handed the election to Clinton, because he was conservative enough that he won, like, I don't know, 25% of the vote or something, and then Bush, the first Bush, the older Bush, won like, I don't know, 30-ish% of the votes, or I don't remember exact numbers, but and then I think Clinton won like 40-ish% of the votes. So now it's like, especially since then, where we're trying to see like maybe other parties, whether they're whatever party, whether it's libertarian, green, or just independent or anything, that's what they're all afraid of, especially because they've usually got to come out of one party or the other. They've got to have a history with one part or the other. But I don't know. I just wish that it could just be there's no parties, because if there's no parties, then somebody comes up and says, hey, I'm running for president. Then it's not like, okay, what are you, blue team or red team? So I don't have to think. It's like, at least listen to this 5-minute, speech, or this, read this for 5 minutes, or do this research to see what might happen if I'm elected. So yeah, ideally it would be zero parties, and it's just you vote on a person based on what they say that they're going for.
Right.
But that's every time I bring that up, it's like, oh, that's pie in the sky. That's a fantasy. There's no way that could happen.
Right.
But it's one of those things. I think that's kind of the rhetorical problem, where I feel like it's like, just like some of the big things that we've sort of championed in our history, women's suffrage, and giving at least the level of racial equality for voting and everything else that we have right now. It was really hard, but it was worth it, and some people back 100 or 200 years ago would be like, there's no way that blacks will get the same vote or women will get the same vote, but it eventually happened. So I feel like even if it takes a lifetime, that should be a goal of this generation, is to start putting that in place. But I don't know. It's interesting to see what you think. I don't know. What do you think, Chloe? Do you think we'd be better off with no parties or more parties, or what's your take on it?
I always wanted a leader. Like, I always want a strong leader. So definitely Democratic leaders, they're not for me. I don't like their tone. I don't like, it's like, to me, I just always wanted to look up to a strong masculine leader. Female can be masculine too. I mean, that is just what I wanted in a president. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. Well, and I guess that's one thing that I'd really be after, whether that it's from originally either side or whatever, is that if we had no parties, or at least the parties not like they are now,
Mm.
you would be able to see like, here's a person being able to be a leader based on their own merit. It's like, in fact, I feel like, I don't know if you would call that sort of like a evolutionary thing of ideas, but it's like they would have to be better leaders to seriously get heard, because you can't just go up and be like, yeah. I'm like, I mean, that's basically what Joe Biden did. He's like, yeah, I'm the establishment blue team guy. Go for me, uh, and for the
that's what people did. People did went for him.
Yeah. Well, they did and they didn't, which is the tricky thing about this year's election. I think that's where a lot of the frustration is at some point, and I don't know how much of it might have been COVID related, that we didn't get like a full, primary cycle. But at some point, it was just
Exactly.
It was like, Bernie and all these others.
Mm.
I don't know. This year was a little confusing. That Bernie was taking so much. Well, yeah, it was a mess because it's like, I'm glad that there's that socialist voice there. I like to, hear the diversity of, opinions and perspectives. but that was, and there's some people that are so passionate about that socialist voice that Bernie could have been the candidate. However, I don't know if that's a serious enough of a real candidate, which is sort of like a thing where he should be in like a socialist party, or I don't know if it'd be Green Party or
I don't think he was a Democrat, and he was like joined the Democrat Party later.
Yeah. Well, I just mean that most of his issues and what he wants to do are not Democrat and they're not Republican. They're more of like a socialist thing. So I don't know if and there's been a lot of people like that. Yang was a little bit. I know it was a big thing with Ron Paul for a few years, and there's been other libertarian types that would get into one party or the other. Then it's like, okay, that's cool. You want to be the Republican or Democrat nominated person, but you're not really part of the party at all. So that was kind of the issue with Bernie. And then so it's almost like I wish we could have had somebody else other than
Bernie.
Well, other than Bernie or Joe Biden, but then because it kind of became a 2-horse race between those two, Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard and some others just completely got lost in the mix.
And, they have a personal charisma. Andrew definitely doesn't have that charisma. And the other girl, I couldn't even pronounce her name. I don't even know which.
Gabbard or what's the other girl?
Whatever. It's just they don't have that attraction. I don't see it.
Yeah. But
the one is very strong.
It's just tricky because they've had. It's just any of them would be better than Joe Biden. It's not even that he's a bad candidate. Like that'd be one thing, because there's been a lot of bad candidates that were on both sides that were like, okay, they're not a very good candidate for a lot of reasons. But when you've got a person that can't even speak in public and you're seriously worried if he's gonna, be able to make it out of the house or, catch a cold and die, then it's hard to seriously get behind that. I think that's a lot of what the issue is, like the frustrations with a lot of these riots and things right now is because they don't see a way out. Like if they had a really good, strong candidate, let's just say, for example, if it was Obama running instead of these guys, and of course that's not possible, but if it was, then I feel like a lot of the people who are protesting, rather than just say we're generally upset about the world, so we're going to break some shit, then they could just get out and get behind Obama or whatever. But so a lot of it is that they're pissed off at the whole system, and I don't even think that they know a lot of times how to put those thoughts together. So some Facebook user said this. I'll have to go on.
The entire political system is a fraud.
Yeah, and that's sort of true. Although one point that I wanted to make is that the advantage to it, as much as you might say it's a fraud or these frustrations that we're bringing up, the advantage to it is that it's designed to make the government keep the government from being stupid, because if the government was able, maybe if it was so strong on one party or the other, or a lot of other ways that it could get a lot more shit done, they would be able to do a lot of stupid shit. But because of the way that we have this kind of bullshit going on, nothing gets done, which is kind of bad, but that's kind of by design of our system of protecting the system from the system itself being dumb or evil or whatever. So
yeah, I think this whole thing about this police brutality, this protest, it's about dumbasses who are in power. Like that police guy, he was just a monster. He's just a monster. He's a dumbass who has power at that moment. It's like probably people protesting against Donald Trump, like they think he's a dumbass in power, which I don't think like that, but I think there's a lot of frustration with the political system.
And I think just the issue is that people have a lot of these frustrations, but they don't know what to do about it. And that's where a lot of the that's where like a lot of just like the general existential problems of life come in.
Right, morality issues.
Well, that if you know what I don't think anybody's lazy or so depressed as they seem, or maybe even say that they are. It's that, okay, if any person sees what exactly that they want, whatever it might be, $1 million, a car, a house, the perfect husband or wife or whatever, and then they see exactly how to get it and what that they can do to attain it, then they just go and do it and they're happy. But the problem is when you're not sure what you want and you're not sure how to get it, then you're just generally frustrated and upset, which I think is a lot of the frustration right now. They want a better political world, sort of like things that we're talking about, but they have no idea how to get it because they don't know exactly what they want and they have no idea how to get it. So they're just going around breaking shit. So I guess Connor is not going to get in here. He was having technical issues.
Connor is in Seattle. Is he in Seattle?
He's in Washington. I'm not sure how far from Seattle. Hopefully he's staying out of Chaz.
Yeah, that's because Chaz. Oh yeah, Chaz.
Yeah, I guess if he disappears altogether, then we know we got sucked into Chaz somehow. The Chaz black hole.
Oh my god.
I don't know how much longer that's gonna last, and it's another one of those things where it's like, it's all senselessness. It's like, okay, congratulations, you set up a new country, but like a lot of the, we're letting people get this out of their system for the most part because a lot of what that they're like storming is. Whether they're storming City Hall or whatever, or the courthouse, they're closed for the most part anyway. Like that whole Chaz zone, it's like, they have less police in Seattle anyway, just like they do everywhere else, and they shut down City Hall for the most part. So it's like, okay, have your fun. We're going to be closed for most of this month anyway, but at some point they've got to just like...
They're going to run out of food. They're going to run out of food. I mean, they're all and shit, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they may have supporters, whether that's Antifa or whatever, but at some point, I don't know if they'll have to, turn off the water power or get people out, however they're going to get out. But it's like... Yeah.
Actually, I don't know much about this stuff. Do you know what Donald Trump is doing about this? I have no idea. What is he doing about it?
I don't.
And it's like...
The thing is, he's trying to put it on the governors for the most part with a lot of these things.
He's probably sick and tired of this whole situation.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, that's why his press secretary is doing most of the talking now, because it's like there's nothing that makes sense that anyone can say anymore. And I think his press secretary has been doing a pretty good job of sort of making as much sense as you can. But for the most part, if you go up and, because it's like, I think that protesters should not kill people and not break things so much. Oh, so you support racism and you're a racist, huh? That's how it comes across. So
that's the wanton uncontrolled tribalism. Yeah. The whole situation is just group thinking and identity politics run nuts, and
that's so, right.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to actually resolve it, but it's a mess.
Jordan Peterson makes this point sometimes, how that, okay, if people go on the extreme right, then there's not a lot of them. It's like probably 1% of 1% in America, for example, of a country. But that if they go on the extreme right, they kind of become something like Nazis or KKK or the extreme racists.
Antifa too.
Well, that's probably the extreme left. But but the thing is, when people are going toward the extreme left, you don't really know it's extreme until it becomes too extreme, like it is now. And then what's really screwed up about it is, even though it's so extreme that it should be obvious, like, hey, you're doing all the things that the extreme right does, but just under a different banner.
That's actually really, really good. Yeah, that's true.
But it like sneaks over there, and then they're still getting like, I'm starting to feel bad about some of the corporations that I support now, like Uber and
you support Uber. Good.
Well, and Amazon, because they're all like Black lives, and it's like, duh, everybody wants every lives of all race, and if there's an exception to that, they have to keep it secret. But yeah, it's just a mess, and it's like, and part of the whole process is because, minorities are more affected by COVID. And it's like, okay, that's biology you're arguing with. Are you going to go scream at a virus or protest a virus? Sure. But that's not, that's not anything. It's not like white people are like injecting minorities with a virus. It's just happened biologically because of some of the comorbidities that are a little more prevalent with Latinos and Blacks. So it's not like protesting is going to solve that issue. So yeah, it's a mess, and I don't know. The issue I was trying to get at is just that we kind of touched on. Is just the whole, like, it's like a matrix that people are in different matrices, sort of thing.
Different realities.
Yeah, different realities, and it's hard to get people. If you can't get people on the same reality, then it's just a shit show, basically.
It is. It's a shit show right now. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm curious, Jonathan, because I saw some of your posts on your page, or your personal page, and maybe a couple other places, that you're trying to understand the Trump side, and you're trying to understand where a person might vote this year. I'm curious how that thought process has maybe evolved or come along the last few weeks.
Oh, well, that particular, I think I know which one you're talking about. That was from Mr. Rogers, Jesse.
Okay.
And he was wondering, he asked on resurgent.us what the Christian vote is going to be this year.
Okay.
And I decided to go ahead and just ask my friends, because I come from a Christian background. I'm not religious anymore, but I come from a Christian background, and I still have a lot of Christian friends, which I want to keep them, right? I don't think religion should separate us like it does. And the poll was interesting, because I basically just asked, what's your position on Trump, and what was it 4 years ago? And I think I only got one response out of like 6 that was in favor of Trump. So now that could be some kind of selection bias, because it was a liberal arts university that my friends came from. But I'm really getting the impression.
Did you say for or against Trump? What did it come out as far as your little poll?
Right. Well, I jokingly said 4 nays, 1 yay, and your vote, because your vote was sort of the most nuanced one.
Okay.
But you're probably going to vote for Joe Jorgensen, right? I'm imagining, or you're leaning in that direction. You're not leaning in the Trump direction. You're leaning sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
Which I am as well. But I guess the total tally was only 1 out of 6 were sort of in favor of Trump, and the other 5 were sort of not planning on voting for him. So
yeah,
if I'm really getting the impression that the Christian right is sort of starting to fragment, because the Republican Party is already fragmented more or less. There's already a sort of, okay, well, you're either the Mitt Romneys and the ones that are like,
the
okay,
establishment,
or you're sort of the complete other side, which gets shut. The media treats completely differently. And so now I'm starting to think, okay, maybe the Christian right is starting to feel this fragmentation, because, after I think it really hit really hard when Trump stood in front of that church and held the Bible upside down after the protests as like a statement. And I saw a lot of people saying, this is just him being a showman. This is him displaying his alms in public. They started quoting that verse. So I'm really curious. I think that they're going to see, because there's so much incentive now on the right to vote middle, like libertarian, but there's now a lot of incentive on the left side to do that as well. So I'm really curious how strong the libertarian vote's going to be this year. I'm hoping it's strong enough to sway it one way or the other. But
I wish the libertarian had I do appreciate Joe Jorgensen, but it's just that almost nobody ever heard of her before she started running.
Right.
So I wish
it was like Gary Johnson last year.
And he wasn't a very strong candidate either, but it's like, I just wish they had a better, candidate. But it's just tricky because, like, okay, if you're a good libertarian candidate, to get that kind of experience that you might need, like, okay, Gary Johnson, for example, at least he was able to go be a governor for I don't know how many terms, at least a couple terms, and then I don't know if Ron Paul ever ran as an actual libertarian, maybe one of the years, but he was a congressman for so many years, but. And then I think when Gary Johnson was, I don't remember if he was an actual Libertarian Party or if he became Republican, at least in name, for, while he was governor. But that's the thing. You have to kind of like put on the red team or blue team hat, for a term or so many terms, and then you switch over. It's rare, even to be like, okay, I'm an independent senator or congressman, just because most people, if they vote, they're just going to vote pure, Democrat or Republican. So it's that. But again, this is the whole problem with the party system.
Right.
Like, everybody should just be independent, at least when they get to, I don't know if maybe it might be different on some levels of government, but for sure when it's to the national level. I don't know. What do you think, Chloe, as far as the whole, I know you're a little more on the Christian conservative background. So what do you think as far as the whole, like, where the Christian conservative type vote might be going or fragmenting recently?
I have no idea. I can only speak for myself, which is, if I can vote, which I couldn't, it's just totally self-interest. I'll just vote for whoever that I think can represent my interest, my personal interest.
Yeah.
Like a personal charisma. That is very important to me. Like a leader, that person looks like a leader, like a leader. And sometimes Donald Trump is really disappointing. The way he handles Twitter and stuff, it's just disappointing. But again, that's him. He is authentic in a way that is just kind of annoying sometimes.
At least with him, he's for the most part not a puppet, and he's for the most part at least like, okay, that was the big thing between him and Hillary, and now same thing between him and Biden is whether it's Biden or Hillary, they can come up and say, if Biden can get through a 2-minute speech, or God forbid a 20-minute speech, and if he can, if he can get through it, then you can say, okay, he made these 10 points, but you have no idea what that has to do with reality, because he's just trying to say what people want to hear. On the other hand, with Trump, where you can give him credit, is for the most part, he's going to have his advisors, and for the most part, listen to them, and you have to kind of ignore the Twitter BS. But it's not even what he might change his mind on things or say stupid things sometimes impulsively, but it wasn't like anything to just be like, okay, people want to hear this, so here you go.
Right.
So that's the one advantage with him. So, and which, as much as a person that's kind of like social suicide sometimes to be like, oh yeah, I would vote for Trump. That's the advantage where it's like, yeah, if it did have to be like gun to my head, I have to pick between the two. It's like, yeah, at least give me the person where I know what they're thinking, even if I know they're thinking something stupid, I know what they're thinking. So gun to my head, yeah, it's Trump over Biden, but it's just a mess.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Which part? Go ahead.
The part where, so this was a big thing in 2016 where people were saying, well, at least Trump says his mind, at least he speaks it like it is, and he doesn't give a damn who likes it or who doesn't. If you're offended, that was a huge thing for the right. But Trump has switched parties more times than I can even count.
Yeah.
Like in 1919, he gave an interview where he said he was pro-choice.
That's right. I watched that interview.
So I'm not convinced at all that what Trump is saying is what he believes. I think what he's saying is good for the party, which is the whole point of why partisan politics is ruled by tribalism. It's that your goal is not to put forward a good campaign to convince people of your ideas. The whole point is to get votes, which means you have to make the right noises. And Trump, I mean, I could look it up. I forgot how many times he's actually switched parties since he's gotten into politics. He was a Republican, then he switched to Democrat, then he switched to Independent, then he switched back to Democrat, then he switched back to Republican. I couldn't actually count it, but it's something like 6 times he's switched.
Yeah, although the advantage that sort of gives him to, and again, I'm not trying to like promote Trump necessarily, but at that level, then you're basically an independent, which is kind of like what we're going for.
Sure, but then in that case, he needs to come out and say it. Like he's clearly manipulating the party, just like like Hillary would have done, or Biden is probably going to do to get the votes. Like the goal is to make the right noises. It has nothing to do with debate and talking about the issues. It's what does Trump's base want him to say? Lock her in jail, lock her up. That's what they were chanting that, right? That's all he needed to say. That's the whole point. And it goes the other way too. I don't trust, I think it was Ray Bradbury, author, who said, once you join a party, you stop thinking. And that's my problem. That's my issue with this whole debacle is we have tribes and movements. That's not a sign of clear thinking.
Yeah, it's a sign of anti-thinking,
right?
Where like if you think you're in trouble, again, it's not so much like go for Trump, but it's like he's enough anti both parties that it comes out to a version of being independent. But yeah, and again, it's not that, and then the other area where it's like, okay, gun to my head, Biden or Trump, it's like, okay. Yes, all the rhetoric of Twitter and everything is a mess. But if you take somebody on either side where it's like, okay, so you're in the blue team or red team, show me exactly the, policy that has been put forth and passed that has affected, your team either way. But for the most part, all the policy that's come forth in the last 3.5 years or whatever has just been tax reform, a little bit of Obamacare reform, at least taking away the individual mandate and starting to build a wall. There hasn't been a lot of actual policy changes that has made the effect either way.
Other than his complete dismantling of environmental regulations, or at least his attempt to. He's really hard on those, and which is one of my biggest issues. But
yeah, although
in any case,
as much as I can see the importance for those, it should ultimately strengthen them, but in a better way, I think. Because, you know, whatever happens, it's like, to be a good environmental regulation, I guess, you have to make your point clear, and that you are achieving that goal, not just like tax somebody because they might be polluting kind of thing, you know, but to actually make the regulation clear as far as how it affects things and brings about a better environment or whatever. But,
sure, yeah. I mean, I'm not here to go, oh, we should do a carbon tax, or we should do a subsidy. Like, how we fix it is up to us, but it's a conversation we should be having. And it seems like Trump is just trying to avoid the conversation because, you know, I mean, the whole tweet storm, you know, you can say whether or not tweet actually reflects what he believes, but you know, tweeting that climate change is a Chinese hoax and all that stuff. It's like, well, is that just inflammatory or what? Well, you know, actions speak louder than words. He hasn't really, you know, and he's signed some good policies. You know, it's not like he hasn't signed any good policies, but it's one of those, you know, he probably doesn't care about global warming or believe in it, or if he does, although it's on his mind, let's say.
Although I think I always try to think one step ahead and the good or bad that can come out of it. And so I think it's like the same thing that, like, okay, what needs to happen more on that climate change discussion is both sides need to make their points a lot more clear, and they need to make it more clear on how to achieve what their goals are. Because basically it's just been like, you know, on that whole front, it's just been shaming and name calling and not getting the science straight at all.
Sure, yeah.
You might be able to speak a little bit more to that on the science side, but it's like, if you have scientific theory and scientific evidence showing one thing or another, then the whole thing should be campaigns to make that obvious. And then it's not just a matter of red team or blue team getting behind it. It's all the people getting behind it. Right. But, you know, we've got the whole world, at least all the first world countries, somewhat trying to figure this out. And, you know, it's been a good 20 plus years with no real progress on that.
Right. Well, that's right. It is a red team versus blue team problem, because the people on the right will say, well, it's just a complete myth. That's wrong. The people on the left will say something like, you know, the coastline is going to be completely flooded in 10 years.
Right.
Nobody's saying that. What, you know, the most dangerous thing about global warming and the increasing rate of carbon dioxide is we don't know what it's going to do. That's the problem. It's an unknown territory that we're treading in. And when we take down forests, and, you know, the whole Amazon burning thing last year, that whole thing just made it so much worse. Yeah. That whole issue is we don't know how much of a catastrophe it could be. And so it's the whole point of it is we need to step back, look at what the science is saying, and then try to figure out amicable ways to move forward without, you know, being this, like you'd say, extreme, inflammatory, you know, making the wrong, you know, making noises for your side. Right.
See, I wonder if this is kind of like the psychological problem where it's like, in my mind, I hear you say these things and I'm like, yay, someone like speaking with sense. But I feel like maybe for most people that it would sway their vote. Like if they're listening to a person say those same sensible things, whether they see it on, you know, YouTube or Fox or CNN, they're just like, next, this is boring. You know, they want to see the inflammatory thing. They'll be like, yeah, my side, that's extreme.
Yeah.
So it's like the right thing to do is to come out and be, moderate and say, hey, we don't know exactly what's happening, but it looks like it's not good, so we need to go this direction, not that direction. That's the right thing, but it seems like that in politics just can't, inherently can't progress anymore.
Right. Well, CNN and Fox don't help the problem.
Right.
They exacerbate it. So that's the whole problem of the whole fake news era seems to stem from this tribalism problem. It's like, it's not just that they can't agree about what to do anymore. They don't even agree about the facts.
Right.
They don't agree on what
or the language
or the narrative. Right. So that's part of the whole problem of this tribal issue is the political parties are going to create a narrative, stick to their guns regardless of whether it's right or not. They're not even paying attention to what's right. So that's what I'm trying to figure out is how to get rid of that, because we have freedom of the press, we have freedom of assembly. How do we get around that problem? That's really what I'm interested in.
Go ahead. Yeah.
And that's the universal truth that we're all seeking, right? The universal truth. Yeah, because I think on the right there's always a saying like we don't believe the experts, so fuck the experts. So it's like the global warming thing. No, nobody believes that. I don't think on the right people believe that the global warming thing. No, it's like no, I don't think so, because I watch Daily Wire. It's all processed news too, but I like those guys. Yeah. So
it's tricky too, because I feel like, okay, even if, let's say, an expert goes on the Daily Wire or goes on Fox News or wherever else, and instead of being like, in 10 or 20 years, California is going to be in the ocean, they came on and they just said something more sensible, like, hey, increasing our carbon emissions could be bad, so let's do less of that. It's like nobody can say anything against that. But it's like both sides just want to polarize, and so then we're stuck in which, let's say hypothetically, global warming or climate change is a real issue, and it might take us 10 or 20 or 30 years to really see that. Who knows? But it's like we're stuck because the government, that's where I said it's a good thing that the government can't get anything done because it protects itself from being stupid. But then the bad thing is, let's say we figure out that global warming is a real thing, then it's hard to get it to go anywhere, because it's like, okay, maybe California is not going to be the ocean, but there's going to be some really bad effects, so we need to make these changes. Then we're stuck because we can't do that. Now, my, I guess, approach to it, sort of more of a libertarian angle, is to try to get non-governmental movement, because the government is inherently slow and for the most part should be. But there needs to be, even if it's just organizations within business that they form themselves, like whatever sort of conglomerations of companies are emitting a lot of carbon, need to make their own things that don't necessarily have government. There's a lot of organization type things that aren't necessarily government that say, okay, if you're going to be a coal producing or coal powered power plant, for example, you're not allowed to operate, or there's lots of ways you can bring about the same type of thing without it having to be, necessarily government regulation. It can be private organizations, whether that's profit, nonprofit, hybrid, or whatever. And those are the type of things that need to happen.
I think unless something really catastrophic happens, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. Into the AOC, they have like a Green New Deal. Go ahead, Jonathan. That's ridiculous.
That's the biggest problem. That's what people are trying to avoid, is we don't want that to happen. So we're trying to stop the potential catastrophes from actually happening. And that's the biggest worry. So if I hope you're wrong about that, but you might be right, because it might take something like that to change people's minds. That's the whole thing scientists are trying to avoid.
Right.
Yeah,
Really
I'm the moderate right. I'm not like that right. So
sure. Yeah.
the liberals like AOC. That's the best thing you guys can do. Like the Greens and gold. Seriously, I mean, you're gonna do what to Hawaii? I'm like, stop. Like, are you? And then Nancy Pelosi was like supporting that, right? We're all. I don't get it. I just don't get it. First Joe Biden, and then oh my God, I don't get it.
Yeah, well, and you know, it's interesting because it seems like on the left, we'll say, although sometimes I don't like those labels, but you kind of have to deal with them. It's like it seems like all they do is they pander to their base, whereas I feel like, and it used to be a bit more of that on the right, we'll say, maybe not as much, but I feel like now, okay, just like the point Jonathan made a few minutes ago, how the Republican, conservative, and even Christian sector is a little bit kind of like fractured, but I feel like that's actually a good thing because it kind of breaks up the tribe, and then you have to figure out what the issues are. Definitely. So I feel like it would be good if the left had that, but with even as stupid as they just get more and more about pandering to their base and nothing about widening the tent or whatever, Yeah. So yeah, it's a tricky game, and I don't know. I guess Connor is not getting in. Anything else?
He's still trying to get in.
I don't know. Where's my?
Yeah, I was right about to ask what Connor's doing right now.
Yeah, I don't know. He said he said he was going to come in sober because he hasn't done that before, but maybe he changed his mind and he can't figure it out drunk.
No, I want him on DMT. That's what I want.
Oh yeah, he keeps talking about that, but it'd be great to just like do a live stream, or I'll get together when he's like tripping on.
I want to do a live stream with him and BJ about DMT and I.
Oh yeah, they're into it. Yeah,
they keep on just nonstop about that stuff.
Oh yeah. Every time I get on with either of them, they've got to slip that in. Like, just get some DMT, man. That's all you got to do. It solves all your problems.
What is that, DMT?
It's a chemical that it's a hallucinogen, psychedelic, and it causes people to see stuff and whatnot. And there's a lot of woo-woo surrounding it about the soul and about metaphysics. I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to it in principle, but I'm skeptical about the more overarching claims that are being made surrounding it.
Yeah, and my whole thing with that is that I think would try to not be in the New Age label or whatever, but it's the same thing as the New Age issue. Like, there's a lot of good things that come out of the whole New Age movement conversation, but it's too nebulous. Like, as far as like, okay, what's your whole like right and wrong? What's your whole like thing on all the issues and how we might, solve some of the world's problems and get along better and all those things. And it's like, you get all these squishy answers. You can't really pin down anything. And then same thing with DMT and ayahuasca and all the other psychedelics like that. It's like, get an experience like divinity thing. And it's like, okay, cool. But since you did that, you like talk to God for real and everything. What happened? What'd he say? Or like, what was all that like? And what did you learn? You just got to do it yourself. So it's just like, and that's cool. I mean, there's definitely some value to it. Like I've talked about a little time where I had some, and I should probably get more into it. Maybe if I can get Connor to, and hopefully between Connor and BJ, and they're supposed to be starting a podcast this month. But I've had some experiences but they were with Molly, which was not psychedelic, but it was more of the issue where your brain is always going through a sort of crystallization liquid thing, and it's like if you do certain substances in a certain way while you're thinking a certain way, it helps to rewire your brain essentially. And what that did for me was there were a lot of thoughts, mostly along the lines that I talk about my group, that I had trouble putting together in my head for a long time. And then after one or two experiences that way a couple years ago, it kind of clicked and started to make more sense. And so it's something that I can really talk about and that I've written about. Maybe I should talk about more of the specifics, but I can get into like really specifics as far as just help me get my thoughts clear, but not just the whole like, it's like divine stuff, do drugs, you know.
But it's like a self-medication thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that. You know, Jonathan Haidt, a psychologist, he took psychedelics when he was in his 20s, and he said that cured some sort of an issue.
Yeah.
It would take like 20 years of therapy to cure that, or you can take that, you know. So I think there's some values in it, but as Christian, you're not supposed to. No, that's where, so just too much. No, not that.
I mean, there's always the risk to take into account, and that's the weird thing with it too, is the whole like, okay, sure, but there's not like a set, you know, here's when to do how much, and here's when you shouldn't do it, because, you know, then there's another guy named Aubrey, who's kind of like this famous podcaster now, but he talks a lot about it. He'll be like, I was like
Joe Rogan talks about it too.
It's like, okay, I did some of these plant-based psychedelics or whatever, probably ayahuasca or something like that.
Right.
And then it's like I went out and I just hugged a tree and I was like talking to this tree for hours.
Oh wow. Oh yeah,
and he's like totally serious, and I'm not saying he's like crazy or anything, but it's like cool. I'm happy that was maybe helpful for you, but it's just so nebulous on how to get anything out of it. I mean, because it's like if I have a religious experience or or a near-death experience that changes my perspective on things, or if I have a some traumatic experience or some whatever that happens that makes me like, oh wow, okay, this is the way I need to change my life and maybe help others that might want to do the same as far as changing their habits or whatever else, then I try to say, okay guys, I went through this experience and now here's what you got to do, or like here's some general principles to go towards and some general principles to avoid or something. But the problem I have with people in that sort of camp, they're great and everything, but it's like, okay, tell me what to do. Since you like communed with the divine, now what? Just do drugs. You know?
Yeah, there are people are like that. They do psychedelics together. They have guardian angels. Yeah, they're they do that. Mm-hmm. Guardian
That's
angels make sure you don't go nuts while you're on the trip.
Hopefully we'll get Connor in here, because now we're like
still drunk.
I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen today, but hopefully we'll get him in here in the next week or two. So okay, we'll wrap it up in just a minute, and in the next few weeks we'll do a little bit of this conversation on Tuesday that we sort of started down this topic last week, but it'll be at noon with the couple European guys, and then after that maybe we'll talk more drugs. We got to talk education. Yeah, once we can get Connor and or BJ on here. I guess they're busy guys and have technical issues, but once we can do that, then cool. And education and some other stuff. So it'll be fun. Do you guys have anything else to say before we wrap it up here in a minute?
Yeah, that drug thing is definitely interesting. I want to learn more about that, because I can't do it. That's why I'm interested in it.
Yeah,
definitely. I want to be part of the discussion.
All right. Yeah, for sure. That'll probably be in the next couple weeks. I'm sure by the end of the month.
Okay. Just let me know.
What about you, Jonathan? Anything else you want to throw out before we wrap it up here?
Not sure. It's great to meet you, Chloe. Good conversation.
Yeah, good. I feel great. I feel like
she's making us look bad with her equipment. Like you're like No, you
Definitely.
have really good webcam, and
Yeah.
I have like half as good as you, and then Jonathan's just like a pixelated, blurry monster. But
Nothing
yeah,
but hair everywhere. Yeah.
yeah, just this hairy beast.
What was that?
But
What was that character on Adam's Family's a ball of hair? Who was it? I forget.
oh, I forget the name. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
The thing maybe, or was that the hand? I don't know.
I'll look it up. It'll be in my
Yeah.
screen name next time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Well, sorry we didn't get everybody in here, but we'll get it all worked out. It's good talk, and we'll do it again sometime.
Okay. Nice talk.
All right. Bye. Thanks.
Take care.
Have a good one. All right. Thanks. Bye.